The billionaire's office was a place of precision and control. Every polished surface gleamed, every document sat neatly stacked, and every employee moved with purpose. This was the empire of Nicholas Carter, a man who built his fortune from the ground up, feared in the business world for his ruthless decisions, and respected for his undeniable success. But today, in the middle of an important meeting, something happened that no amount of planning could have prepared him for. The heavy mahogany doors swung open unexpectedly, drawing every eye in the room toward the entrance. A security guard rushed forward, clearly flustered. But before he could say a word, a small voice cut through the tense silence. "Mommy told me, this is where Daddy works." A hush fell over the room. Nicholas, who had been reviewing a set of financial reports, lifted his gaze, his sharp blue eyes locking onto the unexpected visitor. A little girl stood in the doorway, no older than 6, her tiny hands clutching a worn stuffed rabbit. Her golden curls framed a delicate face. Her big brown eyes filled with both curiosity and certainty, as if she belonged there, like she had every right to be standing in the office of one of the most powerful men in the city. Nicholas felt the air shift. A quiet murmur rippled through the room. His top executives exchanging uncertain glances. The guard hesitated, unsure whether to remove the child or wait for orders. But Nicholas didn't say a word. He was frozen, staring at the little girl as if she'd just spoken a language he didn't understand. Then, she took a step closer. "Are you my daddy?" she asked, tilting her head. Her voice was innocent, unshaken, as if she was simply asking for directions. A slow, heavy silence followed. The tension in the room was suffocating. Nicholas's fingers tightened around the edge of his desk, his mind racing. Who was this child? How did she get past security? And more importantly, why would she say something like that? One of his assistants, a woman named Claire, quickly stepped forward, her face a mixture of confusion and alarm. "Sir, I'm not sure how she got in. I'll have security escort." "No," Nicholas interrupted, his voice calm but firm. His gaze never left the girl. His mind was a battlefield of questions. He had always been careful, meticulous even, when it came to his personal life. He wasn't the kind of man who left loose ends. And yet, here was this child, standing before him, claiming that she was his daughter. "What's your name?" he finally asked. She smiled, a small hopeful smile, as if she'd been waiting for that question all day. "Lily," she answered. "Mommy said you might not remember me, but she told me I should come find you." Nicholas's pulse quickened. The room, filled with some of the most influential people in his company, seemed to shrink, their presence fading. Into the background, he leaned forward slightly, his voice quieter this time. "And who is your mother?" Lily's smile didn't fade, but there was something in her eyes, a flicker of sadness. She clutched her rabbit a little tighter. "Mommy said her name was Sophia." The name hit Nicholas like a lightning bolt. The breath caught in his throat, his world momentarily tilting on its axis. Sophia, a name he hadn't heard in years. A name tied to memories he had buried deep beneath the weight of ambition and success. A name that once belonged to the woman he had loved and lost. His hands trembled slightly, though he hid it well. His executives were now openly staring, their confusion mirroring his own. Claire hesitated before speaking again, her voice cautious. "Sir, should we—" Nicholas raised a hand, silencing her. His focus remained solely on Lily. "Where is your mother now?" he asked, his voice lower, almost hesitant. For the first time, Lily hesitated. Her eyes, which had been filled with so much confidence, now wavered. She looked down at her shoes, her small fingers playing with the ear of her stuffed rabbit. "Mommy said she had to go away," she whispered. "She said she wouldn't be coming back." The weight of those words settled over the room like a dark cloud. Nicholas felt something inside him twist, a feeling he hadn't experienced in years. His chest tightened as 1,000 possibilities flashed through his mind, each one more troubling than the last. Before he could ask anything else, Lily suddenly looked up, her expression serious. "But she told me not to be scared," she said. "She said you'd take care of me." Nicholas inhaled sharply. The room, the people, the meeting, it all faded away. In that moment, there was only Lily and the unshakable truth in her words. This wasn't just some mistake. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was real, and now he had to face the question that would change everything. What was he going to do next? Nicholas Carter was not a man who allowed surprises in his life. He built his empire on control, on calculated risks and strategic decisions. But standing before Lily, hearing her call him daddy, all that control was slipping through his fingers. His mind raced through the past, through memories he had forced himself to forget. Sophia. The name echoed in his thoughts, bringing back the scent of lavender, the warmth of stolen moments in a life that now felt like a distant dream. They had been young, both ambitious, but in different ways. She had wanted a simple life, filled with love and happiness. He had been consumed by his drive to succeed, unwilling to slow down for anything or anyone. Their love had burned brightly, but ended abruptly, the weight of his choices driving them apart. He had never looked back, until now. Nicholas exhaled slowly, forcing himself to focus on the present. His employees still watched in stunned silence, waiting for his reaction. He knew this wasn't the place for personal matters. But how could he send her away? "Lily," he said carefully, his voice softer than before. "Where have you been living?" She hesitated again, shifting her weight. "With Miss Amy," she answered. "She's Mommy's friend. She's nice. But she says we can't stay with her forever." Nicholas clenched his jaw. If Sophia had left Lily in the care of a friend, then something must have gone terribly wrong. He couldn't ignore the possibility that she was in trouble, or worse. Before he could ask anything else, Claire stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Sir, do you want me to arrange for someone to—" "No," Nicholas interrupted. His decision was made before he even had time to process it. "Cancel the rest of my meetings." Claire blinked, startled. "But sir," "I said cancel them." His tone left no room for argument. Turning back to Lily, he stood up from his chair and walked around the desk. He crouched down to her level, trying to ignore the way his heart pounded in his chest. "Would you like to go somewhere quieter, Lily's?" A face lit up instantly. She nodded. Nicholas straightened and turned to his assistant. "Find out where this Miss Amy lives. I want her contact information and address immediately." Claire hesitated, but nodded, hurrying out of the office. Nicholas glanced down at Lily again, his mind still reeling. "Come on," he said gently. "Let's go." The car ride was quiet. Lily sat in the back seat, swinging her legs as she hugged her stuffed rabbit. Nicholas sat beside her, his thoughts spiraling. He wanted answers. He needed to know what had happened to Sophia, why she had sent Lily to find him now, after all these years. When they arrived at the address Claire had provided, Nicholas stepped out first, scanning the small apartment complex. It was nothing like the luxurious homes he was used to. Modest, old, but clean. Lily hopped out after him, holding his hand as they approached the door. A woman in her late 30s opened it, her tired brown eyes widening in shock when she saw Nicholas. "Mr. Carter, you must be Amy," Nicholas said, wasting no time. "We need to talk." Amy hesitated, but stepped aside, letting them in. The apartment was small but cozy, scattered with signs of a child's presence. Lily's drawings on the fridge, a tiny pink backpack by the door. Once they were seated, Amy let out a slow breath. "I was hoping this day would come," she admitted. Nicholas's eyes narrowed. "Start from the beginning. Where is Sophia?" Amy's face fell. She glanced at Lily, who was playing with her rabbit on the couch. She hesitated before lowering her voice. "She didn't tell you, did she?" Nicholas's stomach twisted. "Tell me what?" Amy swallowed hard. "Sophia was sick. Cancer. She fought for as long as she could, but—" She trailed off, her voice thick with emotion. The words crashed over Nicholas like a tidal wave. His breath hitched, his grip on the armrest tightening. "No," he murmured. Amy nodded sadly. "She passed away a month ago." Nicholas closed his eyes, his entire body stiff. A month. She had been gone a whole month, and he hadn't even known. Guilt settled deep in his chest, heavier than he could bear. Amy continued, her voice soft. "Before she died, she made me promise to take care of Lily until I could find you. She said she didn't want Lily to grow up without knowing who her father was." Nicholas turned to look at Lily. She was still playing, her little hands gently fixing the rabbit's ears. She had no idea of the weight of the conversation happening around her. He inhaled deeply, forcing himself to stay composed. "And why did she never tell me about Lily before?" Amy hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "She wanted to, but she was afraid. She thought you had moved on, that your world had no place for them." She sighed. "And when she got sick, she didn't want to burden you." Nicholas felt like the air had been knocked from his lungs. He had spent years believing his past with Sophia was over, never knowing that somewhere out there, his daughter was growing up without him. Amy studied him for a moment. "Look, I don't know much about your world, Mr. Carter, but I do know that little girl loves her mother. And if Sophia believed you were the right person to take care of her, then I hope she was right." Nicholas glanced at Lily again, the innocence in her eyes, the trust she had placed in him so easily. It shattered something inside him. He had never planned on being a father, but now there was no turning back, and just as he was trying to process it all, Lily turned to him with a bright smile. "Daddy!" Nicholas swallowed the lump in his throat. "Yes." She held up her stuffed rabbit. "Can you fix his ear? It's falling off." A small shaky laugh escaped him. The irony of it all. This tiny, fragile creature, asking him to fix something so simple when he himself was breaking inside. He took the rabbit from her hands, inspecting the loose stitching. "I'll take care of it," he promised. And in that moment, he realized he wasn't just fixing the rabbit, he was about to mend something much, much bigger. Nicholas held the stuffed rabbit carefully, running his fingers over the loose stitching. He had spent years closing deals worth millions, making decisions that shaped entire industries. Yet at this moment, fixing a child's toy felt like the most important task of his life. He reached for a sewing kit Amy brought from the kitchen and without a word, began stitching the ear back in place. Lily watched him with wide eyes, swinging her legs off the couch. "You're really good at that," she said with admiration. Nicholas chuckled softly. "I had to learn when I was younger. My mother wasn't around much, so I had to fix my own things." Lily tilted her head. "Did you have a daddy?" His hands stilled for a second. He hadn't spoken about his father in years, and the truth of it still stung. "No," he admitted. "Not the way I should have." Lily thought for a moment. then scooted closer. "But you have me now," she said simply, as if that was the most natural thing in the world. Nicholas swallowed hard, nodding as he tightened the last stitch. "Yes, I do." Amy watched the exchange with quiet approval. She had been nervous at first, wondering if Nicholas Carter, the ruthless billionaire known for his business acumen, would be capable of stepping into this role. But seeing him now, handling Lily's stuffed rabbit like it was the most delicate thing in the world, she realized that maybe Sophia had been right to believe in him. But the past wasn't finished with him yet. Just as Nicholas was about to hand Lily her toy, Amy's phone rang. She glanced at the screen and a troubled look crossed her face. "It's the landlord," she muttered. With a deep breath, she answered. Nicholas could only hear her side of the conversation, but from the way her face tightened, he knew it wasn't good. "But I told you I just needed a little more time." Amy paused, listening. Her fingers gripped the phone tighter. "No, please, I have a child living with me. You can't just—" A long silence. Then her shoulders sagged. "I understand." She hung up, pressing her fingers to her forehead. Lily, still oblivious, played with her newly mended rabbit. "They're evicting you?" Nicholas asked. Amy let out a humorless laugh. "They gave me an extra month, but it's up. I was using what little savings I had to take care of Lily. But I can't stretch it any further. We have to leave by the end of the week." Nicholas felt a surge of protectiveness. He had spent his whole life ensuring he never had to struggle again, but seeing the desperation in Amy's eyes reminded him of the life he had left behind, the one where his own mother had struggled to keep a roof over their heads. He wouldn't let Lily go through that. "Pack your things," he said. Amy blinked. "What?" "You and Lily," he clarified. "You're coming with me." Amy stared at him, unsure if she had heard correctly. "Nicholas, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but no arguments." He cut in. "Sophia trusted you with her daughter, and I won't forget that, but you shouldn't have to struggle for doing the right thing." He glanced at Lily, who was still happily playing. "Lily deserves stability, and you deserve peace of mind." Amy searched his face, looking for any trace of hesitation, but found none. For the first time in weeks, she let out a breath of relief. That night, Nicholas brought them back to his estate, a place far different from the small apartment Lily had known. She walked through the massive front doors, her eyes filled with wonder as she looked at the grand staircase and the shimmering chandelier. "This is your house?" she asked in awe. "Our house now," Nicholas corrected, watching her reaction carefully. Lily turned to him, smiling brightly. "I think Mommy would like it." The weight of her words settled deep in his heart. He had spent years building this home, but it had always felt empty. Now, with Lily running through the halls and Amy setting her things in the guest room, it finally felt like more than just a house. It felt like a home, but there was still one last thing he needed to do. That evening, after Lily had fallen asleep in the bedroom Nicholas had arranged for her, he stepped into his private office. He pulled out an old box from the back of his drawer, the one thing he had kept from his past with Sophia. Inside was a photograph of them, taken years ago when they were still young, still full of dreams. He traced his fingers over her face, his heart aching with regret. "I'm sorry," he whispered, "for everything." He had lost Sophia, but he wouldn't fail Lily. He would give her the life she deserved, the love she needed. He would be the father she had been searching for. As he closed the box and turned off the light, Nicholas knew his life had changed forever. Not because of his wealth or his success, but because of a little girl who had walked into his office and called him Daddy. And, for the first time in years, he finally felt like he had found something worth more than all the money in the world.